how do we know if we're making progress on the spiritual path? How do we know? So maybe initially you might be a little bit less reactive. Maybe you're a bit lighter, a bit freer. And those things that used to worry you just really not important anymore. Eventually people around you might start to notice as well and point out. You're able to be, to abide peacefully. Less judgment. I think Mandy said it, you become cool with being uncool. Yeah, maybe less, if anger was one of your predispositions, that might disappear. You're living the yamas and niyamas. You're not a parigraha. There's no grasping, seeking. Many indicators.
I think you also understand things you didn't understand before. We were having a discussion about that at breakfast. Someone was reading a book that was sort of advanced for a beginner. I didn't quite understand it, so I couldn't get into it. And they put it away, and then they were just trying to meditate, just trying to figure out what to do with the limited resources they might have had. And they picked it up 2 years later, and it made sense to them. So it indicates that within that 2-year period, even though when it was described to me, it sounded like there was some doubt about whether they were really doing a good job at it. Well, obviously they were, because they had growth. They had an ability to comprehend that which they couldn't comprehend before.
It's kind of, I feel like it's like a spectrum. Like, we like to think that there's a marking point, another marking point, another marking point, another marking point, using the models and using our frameworks that we use. But there's an occasion that happens when you kind of go, I don't feel like I'm the same person as I used to be. Like the whole thing, the way I relate to living seems to have shifted. And when you arrive at that realization, it kind of comes as a consequence of smaller realizations that cumulatively, one day you turn around and you kind of go, wow, my life is so different. Everything's changed so much. And the way I engage in life, it's really considerably different to how I used to do it before. And when does that happen? Like what's the specific moment? How many weeks, years? I think it happens at differing stages to differing degrees, and it's even right now you're sitting here and you can kind of reflect back and say, well, I've really changed quite a few things in my life. Like the person I was 2 years ago isn't necessarily how I was doing things then, isn't how I'm doing things now, and how I perceived things and how I understood things isn't how I understand things now. And so that's the transition. There's been a shift, but then that will accumulate and continue on until it's the seeing through of what I call the fabrication, the seeing through of the whole, what seems to be going on. It's almost like you get to a point when you look and you say, wow, I really just have a whole different perspective on this whole thing. I've really shifted in how I understand all of this. And you don't know when that actually happened. And it's been cumulative. But there are moments, or maybe there's an occasion that arrives when you just kind of have that realization, and it could come as in an instant when you're sitting on your bed or when you've read something where it just all seems to go, whoa, I just see that everything isn't the way I used to think it was, and there's a seeing through in that way, and that might happen once, and then it might happen again, and it might happen again. So it's very hard to say when things happen, but when they happen, you know they happen.
And in your meditation practice, there's less fluctuations, fluidities.